In 2008, South Park made a cartoon joke about viral video stars getting paid in confetti by a fake government office. 4 years later, a real United States federal appeals court cited that joke in a legal ruling to win Comedy Central a lawsuit. A cartoon about internet fame became actual case law. Most people do not know that happened. Most people treat South Park as a show that reacts to the internet. The truth is the opposite. The show has been predicting the internet step by step for almost 20 years. This video walks through 10 episodes and story arcs where South Park fired a direct shot at online culture and hit something the rest of the world would not understand until much later. Viral fame, Facebook, Apple agreements, trolls, cancel mobs, streaming wars. Every one of them got called out early, on screen, by two guys in Colorado who were watching the wires closer than the rest of us. Welcome to East Park. Let's begin. The first shot fired. How Canada on strike predicted creator economy collapse in 2008. The year is 2008. Facebook has about 80 million users, which sounds like a lot until you remember that today, the platform has over 3 billion. The iPhone is 9 months old. YouTube has been around for 3 years. Twitter is barely a toddler. The word influencer, in the way we use it now, does not exist yet. There is no TikTok. There is no Instagram. Most adults still use the internet the way someone uses a library. They go in, they look something up, they leave. In the middle of that world, Trey Parker and Matt Stone made an episode called Canada on Strike. It aired on April 2nd, 2008 as the 4th episode of season 12 and the 171st episode of the entire series. On the surface, it looks like a goofy half hour of South Park doing what South Park does. Canada goes on strike. The whole country refuses to work until the rest of the world pays them more money. The boys try to help by raising money the only way a group of 4th graders can raise money in 2008. They make a video and put it on the internet and hope it goes viral. That is the setup. What happens after that is where the episode becomes something closer to a time machine. The boys decide to film Butters singing a song called What in the Butt. The song is a real song. It was made by a real artist named Samwell, and a cartoon version of his music video had already become one of the early viral hits on YouTube. The boys recreate it almost frame for frame. They upload it to a site the show calls YouTube. The video takes off. Millions of views. Everyone in town is watching it. Butters becomes famous overnight, and the boys head to a place called the Colorado Department of Internet Money to collect their earnings. This is where the scene that matters happens. The boys walk into a waiting room, fully confident that they are about to cash out on their viral moment. And sitting in that waiting room are all the other famous viral video people from 2008. Tayson Day is there. He was the guy who sang Chocolate Rain in a deep voice. Afro Ninja is there. He was the guy whose audition tape went wrong when he tried to do a backflip and landed on his head. The Sneezing Panda is there. So is Chris Crocker, the one who made the famous Leave Britney Alone video. Tron Guy is there in his full glowing costume. Star Wars Kid, the teenager who filmed himself swinging a stick and became a laughingstock when his classmates leaked the tape, is there. The Numa Numa guy is there. The dramatic chipmunk is there. The laughing baby is there. All of them are sitting around waiting for the same payout the boys are waiting for. And all of them are angry, bitter, and full of themselves. They start arguing about who is more famous, who deserves the most money, who the real viral king of the internet is. The argument gets so heated that they literally start killing each other, one by one, in a waiting room, over imaginary money. Then the clerk finally calls the boys up to the window, and they find out what internet money actually is. It is not money. It is a handful of paper confetti. The clerk hands them a thin stack of colored bits of paper, and that is their reward for having the most viewed video on the internet. Worthless decorations. The boys look at the confetti. They look at the clerk. They look at the pile of dead viral stars behind them. The joke lands like a punch. In 2008, this was treated as a silly goof, a cute little jab at the strange world of online fame. Most people did not think harder about it than that. But watch that scene now, almost 20 years later, and it looks less like a comedy bit and more like a warning that nobody read. Every single thing in that waiting room has come true. The argument over worth. That is the entire modern creator economy. If you have ever heard a YouTuber complain about another YouTuber getting demonetized while they got a brand deal, or watched a TikToker melt down because someone with fewer followers got a bigger sponsorship, you are watching the Colorado Department of Internet Money play out in real time. The attention pie is tiny, and the people fighting over slices are often willing to destroy each other for a bigger piece. The rage of the viral stars. That is also real. A huge number of the actual people referenced in that episode have talked publicly about how being famous on the internet ruined their lives. Star Wars Kid sued his classmates because the mockery pushed him into serious depression. Tayson Day has spoken about about how being the chocolate rain guy followed him around for years like a label he could not peel off. The pattern is the same every time. You go viral. The whole world knows you for 10 seconds. The whole world forgets you in 11. And you are left holding a handful of fame that you cannot trade for anything real. The empty payout. That is the third prediction, and the one that has hit the hardest. Millions of people have tried to build a living off platforms that pay them almost nothing. YouTube partners make tiny fractions of a cent per view. TikTok creators have openly admitted that videos with 10 million views earn them less than a fast food shift. The dream that a viral moment would equal real money was always a lie, and Canada on Strike diagrammed the lie a full year before most people even had a smartphone in their pocket. Here is where it gets almost too perfect. In November of 2010, the company that made the real What in the Butt cartoon sued Comedy Central for copyright infringement. The company was called Brown Mark Films. They argued that by recreating the music video, South Park had stolen their work and ruined their chance at making money from it. The case went all the way to the United States 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. In June of 2012, the court ruled in favor of Comedy Central, and the reasoning is the part that matters here. The judges specifically pointed to the argument South Park had made inside the episode. They said that any money Brown Mark could claim to have lost could only be measured in what the episode itself had called internet dollars, which the court noted had, quote, no measurable commercial value. They even noted that, if anything, South Park's version of the video had probably increased the original video's ad revenue by drawing more attention to it. Read that again. A federal appeals court used the punchline of a South Park episode as part of the legal reasoning for its decision. The joke was strong enough to work in a courtroom. The satire became case law. That is not something that happens with a regular comedy bit. It happens when a show lands so precisely on the truth of a moment that the real world bends to match it. In 2008, Parker and Stone looked at the explosion of viral videos and asked one question that nobody else was asking. Who is getting paid? And the answer they found, which they dressed up in confetti and stuffed into a waiting room full of bitter famous strangers, was the same answer that every creator economy report would come to 15 years later. Almost nobody. And the ones who do are not getting anywhere close to what they think they are earning. The episode does one more thing that is worth pausing on. It does not just predict the money problem, it also predicts the emotional problem. Look at the way those viral stars behave in that waiting room. They are not happy people. They are not enjoying their fame. They are exhausted, angry, insecure, and willing to turn on each other in a heartbeat. Every one of them is clinging to their one famous moment like a life raft, because they know that the moment is already slipping. Tay Day does not want to be Chocolate Rain forever, but Chocolate Rain is all he has. And so when someone walks into the room with a newer video and more views, it feels like a physical threat. Anyone who has watched a longtime creator lose their audience to a younger creator knows this feeling. It looks like pettiness from the outside. From the inside, it feels like drowning. The Colorado Department of Internet Money Scene captured that feeling before there was a word for it. There is one more detail that often gets missed. The episode aired during the 2007 to 2008 Writers Guild of America strike. Real Hollywood writers were on strike demanding better pay because studios had figured out how to make money off their work online while paying them the same rates they had paid before the internet existed. Parker and Stone were not on strike themselves, but they were watching. And the episode uses the Canada plot as a way to sneak in a parallel argument about that exact fight. The acronym of Canada's union in the episode, the World Canadian Bureau, is WGA, which happens to be the real acronym for the Writers Guild of America. In other words, Canada on strike is not just a prediction about influencers. It is a prediction about every person whose work would eventually be turned into content for a platform that pays them nothing. The viral stars are the symptom. The strike is the cause. The confetti is the conclusion. And all three were sitting there on screen while most of the audience was laughing at a fart joke. This is the thing that makes South Park worth taking seriously on this subject, and the reason a full essay can be built around its war with the internet. The show was not reacting to internet culture when internet culture had already matured. It was reacting to internet culture when internet culture was still a baby. It watched the first big wave of viral fame, the first platforms, the first stars, and it already understood where the whole thing was heading. Not because Parker and Stone are secretly prophets, but because they asked a question most people were too dazzled to ask. Who gains from this? Who loses? And what happens when the whole world agrees to trade real things for imaginary ones? That question sits under every single episode that is coming up in this video. You will see it in the Facebook episode, where a whole town treats a friend list like a report card. You will see it in the Apple episode, where nobody reads what they are signing and pays the price. You will see it in the social media season, where Kyle's own father becomes the villain of the internet. You will see it in the PC Principal arc where outrage becomes an industry. Every single one of those stories is a new version of the same waiting room from 2008. Different people, same confetti. What makes Canada on Strike the right starting point for this whole video is not that it was the funniest episode South Park ever made about the internet. It probably was not. What makes it the right starting point is that it was the earliest one that was completely right. Everything that came after, in the show and in real life, is a variation on the pattern this episode laid out. People chase fame on the internet. The fame is real. The money is fake. The emotional cost is huge. And the system only works if a lot of people keep showing up to pretend otherwise. 20 years of online culture have not changed that pattern. If anything, they have only made it worse. The platforms are bigger, the audiences are bigger, the dollars are bigger for the tiny fraction of people at the top. But the median creator, the person who you actually see making a living off the internet in their own head, is still walking up to the same little window with the same hopeful smile, expecting to be paid for their million views. And the confetti is still confetti. The Colorado Department of Internet Money is the actual address of every creator economy platform on Earth. Parker and Stone just got there first. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The waiting room was the warning. The confetti was the punchline. But there was still a more personal battle coming. 2 years later, the show turned its aim on something every single viewer already had open on a second tab, and found a way to trap Stan inside it. Section 2, the Facebook episode that predicted the attention economy. You have zero friends. 2 years passed between Canada on Strike and the next big shot South Park fired at the internet. In that gap, the world changed completely. Facebook went from a college website to a global machine. The number of users quadrupled. The word friend stopped meaning what it had meant for 1,000 years. Suddenly, you could have 500 of them. You could lose one with the click of a button. You could measure your worth by how many you had piled up next to your name. And in April of 2010, Parker and Stone noticed that everyone around them had started treating this number like it actually meant something. So they made an episode about it. You Have Zero Friends aired on April 7th, 2010, as the 4th episode of season 14. It was also the 199th episode overall, a milestone number hiding inside a joke about clicking Add Friend. The setup is simple. Stan does not have a Facebook page, and he does not want one. His friends think this is unacceptable, so Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny go behind his back and make one for him. They put his photo up, they fill out his profile, they add themselves as his friends. And when Stan finds out, he is furious. He refuses to log in. He refuses to add anyone else. He wants nothing to do with it. What happens next is the part of the episode that most people remember as just a fun cartoon bit, but which was actually doing something much sharper under the surface. The whole town turns on Stan for not using Facebook. Random strangers stop him in the street and ask why he has not added them. His grandmother calls him crying. His girlfriend Wendy gets furious at him for leaving his relationship status blank. His own father Randy walks into his bedroom and asks, in a voice full of real hurt, "So we are not friends?" Stan tries to explain that of course they are friends. They are father and son. They live in the same house. Randy is not satisfied. Being family is no longer enough. Being in the same room is no longer enough. The little blue button is the only thing that counts. This scene alone would have been enough to make the episode worth remembering. A dad telling his son that their real-life relationship is invalid because of a missing click. That is a complete argument about what Facebook did to the idea of connection, compressed into about 30 seconds of television. But the episode keeps going, and it keeps getting sharper. The second thread is about Kyle. Kyle has 37 Facebook friends, which makes him feel inadequate compared to Cartman and Kenny. So he decides to do something nice. There is a lonely third grader at school named Kip Jordy. Kip has no friends at all on Facebook. He has had a profile for over 6 months, and 0 people have added him. Kyle, out of pity, clicks the button and becomes Kip's friend. Kip's reaction is one of the saddest jokes the show has ever written. He goes home and tells his parents, with full genuine joy, that he made a friend today. His parents are thrilled. They ask what the friend is like. Kip tells them everything he has learned from Kyle's profile. His favorite hobbies, his favorite movies, that he is currently wondering if Hurt Locker really deserved its Oscar. The parents are moved. They think their lonely son has finally been rescued. And the whole time, the viewer knows that Kyle and Kip have never actually spoken in real life. The entire friendship exists because of one mouse click. Then the punishment comes. Kyle's friend count starts dropping fast. Within a day, he loses half of them. The reason is that being seen as Kip's friend makes Kyle himself look like a loser. Nobody wants to be connected connected to a connection who is worth nothing. Cartman even sets up a pretend financial news show called Mad Friends, which is a direct parody of the real show Mad Money hosted by Jim Cramer on CNBC. On the show, Cartman treats Facebook friends the way Wall Street treats stocks. He recommends buying and selling people. He tells his audience to dump Kyle immediately because his numbers are crashing. He tells them to invest in a kid named Clyde because his birthday is coming up and he is going to Casa Bonita. He tells them that chick friends are worth triple what dude friends are worth. This is the heart of the whole episode, and it is the reason You Have Zero Friends still matters 15 years later. Parker and Stone looked at Facebook in 2010 and understood something that most users did not fully figure out until years later. Once human beings become numbers on a screen, they stop being human beings in any practical sense. They become stocks. They become assets. They become things you can dump when they lose value. Every person you have ever seen unfollow a friend after that friend did something embarrassing has lived through Mad Friends. Every time a social media user has watched their own count drop and felt something close to grief, they have been inside Kyle's crisis. The Kip storyline takes this even further. Kyle eventually caves to the pressure and unfriends Kip. The click takes a second. Kip notices right away. His face falls. He goes from being the happiest he has ever been to being crushed in the space of one refresh. He becomes an empty kid sitting in an empty room staring at an empty screen. The joke is that nothing has actually changed in real life. Kyle and Kip still do not talk to each other. They still do not know each other. But the removal of that one tiny connection feels to Kip like losing a best friend, because on Facebook, that is what a friend was. Meanwhile, Stan's storyline takes a turn that at first looks like a cartoon gag, and which turns out to be the cleanest metaphor the episode has. Stan decides to delete his account. Facebook will not let him. When he tries, his webcam activates by itself and pulls him bodily into the screen. He is physically sucked inside Facebook in a long sequence that parodies the movie Tron. Inside the virtual world, he meets the computer versions of everyone he knows. They speak in Facebook language. They do Facebook activities. They cannot imagine any other way to be. Stan is forced to play games, to answer status updates, to do all the things he refused to do in the real world. Facebook does not ask for his consent anymore. It has him. This is the part that hit in 2010 as a funny reference to an old science fiction movie, and which now plays like a documentary. You cannot easily delete a Facebook account today. You cannot easily delete anything. The data stays. The profile lingers. If you try to leave, the platform sends you emails begging you back, showing you photos of friends who miss you, tagging you in posts so the algorithm can drag you back in. The show turned this into a literal prison scene, but the emotional truth of the scene is exactly what every person who has tried to log off has felt. Stan eventually escapes the Facebook world by beating his own profile in a game of Yahtzee. He wins on the first roll, which is a 1 in 1,296 chance, and the victory lets him delete the account for real. He comes back to the real world free. He has 0 Facebook friends, and then the show delivers its final gut punch. All the hundreds of thousands of friends that had piled up on Stan's account get automatically transferred to Kip. Kip looks at his screen. His friend count goes from 1 to 845,323. He is saved. But nothing about Kip has changed. He is still the same lonely kid in the same empty room. He still has no actual friends. He just has a big number next to his name now. That is the show's final verdict on the whole system. The number is the only thing that moves. The person underneath never does. It is important to sit with one detail about how this episode got made because it explains why it lands so hard. Trey Parker came up with the story after signing up for Facebook himself. He got on the platform like everyone else, and within a short time, he found that people were genuinely angry at him. Angry because he was not responding to their requests fast enough. Angry because he was not liking their photos. Angry because he was not behaving like a proper Facebook user. The anger was not a joke. It was real. And Parker, who by that point had spent over a decade making the most popular animated show on television, suddenly felt the same pressure that every normal user was feeling every day. He wrote the episode directly out of that feeling. You can tell. The anger in the Randy scene, the exhaustion in the Wendy scene, the quiet horror of the Kip scene. These are not jokes written by people guessing at what Facebook does to people. These are jokes written by a person who had just been through it and wanted to describe what it felt like from the inside. The episode was watched by 3,071,000 viewers on the night it aired, making it the second most watched show on cable that evening. It was beaten only by a crime drama. It earned strong reviews at the time, with IGN giving it a 9 out of 10 and calling it one of the best episodes the show had served up in a while. Entertainment Weekly pointed out something important in its review. They noted that the episode was ruthlessly precise about who it was was targeting. Not young users, older users, parents, grandparents, the generation that had shown up late to the platform and was taking it the most seriously. The kid characters in the episode, aside from Kip, are mostly annoyed by Facebook. The adults are obsessed with it. That detail has aged into something almost prophetic, because every piece of research done since on social media use has shown that older adults are, on average, more addicted than younger ones, and more likely to believe what they see there. There is one more layer to this episode that deserves a direct look. Cartman's Mad Friends podcast is not just a parody of Jim Cramer. It is a diagram of the business model of every social media platform that has existed since. Stocks have values. Stocks rise and fall. Stocks can be traded. Stocks can be shorted. When you turn a person into a follower count, they become exactly that. They become a number that can go up or down, a number that attracts or repels other numbers, a number that can be bought and sold. Influencer marketing, which is now worth tens of billions of dollars a year, runs on this exact logic. A creator with 1 million followers is worth a certain amount. A creator who loses half of those followers is worth half. A creator who gains a controversy loses value. A creator who goes viral gains value. The Mad Friends joke was not a joke about Facebook. It was a joke about what all of social media would eventually become. The saddest part in hindsight is the Kip ending. The show plays it as a funny twist. Kip gets all of Stan's friends transferred to him. Big number, happy cartoon music, the audience is meant to laugh. But watch it today and it lands differently. Kip is us. All of us. The lonely kid sitting in a room staring at a number that he thinks is going to fix him. The number does not fix him. The number never fixes anyone. But the number is what the platform gives you in place of the thing you actually wanted, which was someone to know you, someone to talk to, someone to remember your birthday without being reminded by an app. You Have Zero Friends is the episode that understood this before almost anyone. Not in a think piece, not in a long essay, in a 22-minute cartoon full of fart jokes and a Tron parody. That is what makes South Park at its best so hard to dismiss. The ideas inside these episodes are often sharper than the ideas in actual journalism from the same year. And the reason is simple. Journalists were still writing about Facebook as if it were a tool. Parker and Stone had already figured out that it was a machine for turning people into stocks. If there is one line from this episode that captures the entire thesis, it is Randy's. Not in Randy's words, but in Randy's face when Stan tells him they are not Facebook friends. The expression on that cartoon dad is the expression of a person who has just been told that the realest relationship in his life does not count because a button was not pressed. That is what the internet does. It takes the things that used to be automatic, family, friendship, belonging, and it turns them into things you have to prove with a click. And if you do not click, the thing itself starts to disappear. Every time you have felt weird about not following someone back, you have been inside this episode. Every time you have worried about who unfollowed you, you have been inside this episode. Every time you have checked a number and felt your mood move up or down based on it, you have been inside this episode. Canada on strike predicted the money lie of the internet. You Have Zero Friends predicted the emotional lie. Both lies are still running. Both are still profitable. Both still require millions of people to wake up each day and pretend they are not lies. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. A year after Facebook got its episode, Apple was up next, and the target this time was not the count on your screen. It was the fine print under the button you were about to press. Section 3, Terms and Conditions, Human Centipad, and the Real Price of Convenience. By April of 2011, a scandal had broken open in the tech world. Researchers had discovered that iPhones and iPads were quietly tracking the movements of their users. Everywhere a person went with their phone in their pocket was being recorded and stored on the device, and in many cases sent back to Apple. The story blew up for about a week. Newspapers covered it, tech blogs demanded answers. Apple eventually issued a statement. Most users shrugged and kept using their phones. The news cycle moved on. Parker and Stone did not let it move on. On April 27th, 2011, they premiered Human Centipad as the first episode of season 15. It was the 210th episode of the series overall, and within minutes it had taken the tracking scandal, the growing dependence on Apple products, and the long-ignored world of user agreements, and welded all three together into one of the most grotesque half hours the show had ever made. The title gives you the basic gag. The episode takes its name from a 2009 horror film called The Human Centipede. In that film, a mad doctor kidnaps 3 people and surgically attaches them mouth to rear end in a single connected chain. It is a disgusting movie. Most people people who know about it have never actually watched it, which is the point. The idea is so revolting that the title alone does most of the work. Parker and Stone took that idea and asked a simple question. What if Apple made one? The plot has two threads running at the same time. The first belongs to Cartman. Every kid in his class has gotten an iPad. Craig has one, Kyle has one. Kenny is so poor he cannot afford one and watches the others play with theirs like a kid pressed against the candy store window. Cartman has been telling everyone he has one too, but he has been lying. When Craig finally calls his bluff in front of the whole class, Cartman is humiliated. He needs his mother Leanne to buy him one immediately. He drags her to Best Buy. She looks at the price tag of $899.99 and suggests they get a cheaper tablet instead, a Toshiba Handybook. Cartman loses his mind in the middle of the store. He screams. He accuses her of not caring about him. He uses language so ugly that other shoppers begin to assume Leanne has been doing something horrific to her son. That thread, which plays out across the episode, is one of the cruelest portraits of entitled kid behavior the show has ever done. Cartman eventually goes on the Dr. Phil show and performs such a convincing story of his mother fucking him over that the real live studio audience turns against her. She is now publicly seen as an abuser because her son wanted an iPad and she said no. Leanne finally snaps in a way she never has before. She refuses. She walks out. She leaves him empty-handed. While all of this is happening, the second thread is building. Kyle is at home one night. He wants to download the newest update for iTunes, which most viewers at the time were doing regularly without a second thought. The update brings up a window full of tiny legal text, the terms and conditions. Kyle does not read them. Nobody reads them. He clicks agree. The update downloads. He goes to bed. The next day, black vans arrive in South Park. Men in suits jump out and start chasing Kyle through the streets. They tase him. They tase his father when Gerald tries to protect him. They throw him into a van and drive away. Kyle has been kidnapped by Apple, legally, because he agreed to it. He wakes up in a cell with two strangers, a Japanese man and a young woman. Neither of them knows why they are there. Then the answer is revealed in one of the most memorable scenes in the show's history. At a massive stage event that parodies the real Apple keynote presentations that Steve Jobs used to host, Jobs himself walks out to present his new creation. The curtain drops, the crowd goes silent, and there, on stage, is the human centipede. 3 human beings on all fours. The Japanese man in front with an iPhone strapped to his forehead, Kyle in the middle, the young woman at the back with an iPad attached to her rear end. They have been sewn together mouth to rear in the exact way the horror film depicted, and this connected chain of suffering is being unveiled as a product that millions of people will soon line up to buy. The audience at the keynote does not scream, they applaud. They take photos, they lean forward in their seats, they want one. This is the moment the episode is really about, not the gross image, the reaction to it. Steve Jobs has built something monstrous using people who signed an agreement they did not read, and the crowd cheers because it is new and it is Apple. Jobs begins to demonstrate the product. He tries to make it walk. He tries to make it fetch. He grows frustrated when Kyle keeps signing every single piece of paper that Jobs puts in front of him without reading any of them. The point of the scene is that even after being kidnapped and surgically altered because he did not read an agreement, Kyle still has not learned to read agreements. Meanwhile, Kyle's friends and his father go to the Apple store to ask the employees, known in the episode as the geniuses, how to get him back. The geniuses sit down, speak in a hushed tone, and perform a weird religious ceremony over the problem. Eventually, they determine that Kyle's agreement can be voided if Gerald, who is a PC user, signs up for Apple and creates a family account. Gerald agrees. The paperwork goes through. Jobs is forced by his own terms and conditions to release Kyle. He is furious, but he has no choice because even Apple has to follow the contract. Cartman, who was given the first ever human centipede as a consolation gift for his made-up suffering, loses his brand new product when Kyle is removed from it. He looks up at the sky and yells at God for taking his dream away. A lightning bolt strikes him. The final shot of the episode is Cartman in a hospital bed, covered in bandages, crying, while his mother reads a magazine next to him without any sign of concern. She has finally stopped falling for him. There is so much packed into this episode that it is worth slowing down on what Parker and Stone were actually arguing. Because the surface joke is about Apple, the deeper joke is about something bigger. Every single adult who uses the internet has clicked agree on terms they have not read. All of them. The numbers on this are not in dispute. Studies done over the years have shown that if a person read every user agreement they encountered in a single year, it would take them around 76 36 full working days to get through them all. Nobody does this. Everyone clicks. Everyone agrees. Everyone waives rights they do not know they have, gives permissions they do not know they are giving, and signs up for consequences they do not know they are accepting. This is the single most universal modern behavior, and in 2011, South Park built a half hour of television around the idea that this behavior has real costs, even if we pretend it does not. The iPad scandal was the trigger, but the episode is not really about the iPad. The iPad in the episode costs $899.99, but the real price is never counted in dollars. The real price is paid by people who have already forgotten that they paid it. The Japanese man cannot speak. He cannot leave. His face is strapped to a device. The woman at the back is powering the iPad with her own bodily fluids, which is where the feces engine joke comes in. Kyle in the middle is trapped between them, breathing in what the man in front is exhaling and exhaling into the mouth of the woman behind him. It is a horror show, and it exists because 3 people in 3 different places clicked agree without reading. The episode is making one very clear claim. The company is not the villain. The company is a machine. Machines do what machines do. The villain is the choice we make every single day to hand over our rights in exchange for a slightly shinier product. The episode treats the user agreement not as boring paperwork, but as a real contract with real consequences. Jobs in the episode is actually following the rules. When Gerald finds a loophole in the paperwork, Jobs has to release Kyle. The law works. The agreements work. The problem is that we do not read them. One of the quietest but sharpest jokes in the episode is the moment Kyle tells an Apple employee that he did not read the terms. The employee laughs in his face. Right, he says. Who just agrees to something they don't read? Everyone, of course. That is the entire point. The joke cuts 2 ways. It mocks the employee for being oblivious. It mocks the audience for being exactly what the employee is describing. There is another angle to the episode that most people missed at the time, but which has grown more obvious with every year. The episode is one of the earliest mainstream pieces of entertainment to openly treat tech companies as having near religious power over their users. The Apple Store scene, where the geniuses deliberate like high priests performing a ritual, is not just a cheap jab. It is a picture of how consumers were starting to behave around these products. People were already camping outside Apple stores before launches. They were already referring to products as if they had feelings, as if the company's decisions were moral ones, as if their own identity was wrapped up in which phone they held. The episode sees this and makes it visible. The priests deliberate. The ritual is performed. The contract is sacred. And somewhere inside the temple, 3 human beings are stitched into a product that nobody is supposed to think about. A real piece of context matters here. The making of this exact episode became the subject of a Comedy Central documentary called 6 Days to Air, which premiered on October 9th, 2011. The documentary followed Parker, Stone, and the entire staff through the week of the episode's production. It showed the late nights, the last-minute changes, the sheer panic of building a half hour of television in less than a week. And because Human Centipede was the featured episode, the documentary gave viewers a rare window into how fast South Park actually reacts to the world. Parker had the idea after reading the news. He was writing it within days, it was airing within a week. That turnaround time is part of the reason the show has been able to stay ahead of the internet over and over again. Most satire has to wait months or years to respond to a moment. South Park responds in days. The review response at the time was strong, but not universal. The episode pulled in 3,108,000 viewers on the night it aired. Tech writers covered it seriously. A TechCrunch article published the day after airing was titled, "South Park Scares You into Reading Apple's Terms and Conditions." The headline is worth reading twice. A comedy show had, for a moment, become more effective at warning people about digital consent than actual journalism had been during the entire week of the tracking scandal itself. Parents were talking about the episode with their kids. Tech workers were sharing clips at the office. For a short window, a cartoon did the job that 100 news articles had failed to do. One final thing is worth naming directly. The episode did not just predict that people would keep clicking agree. It predicted something harder to say out loud. It predicted that the people designing these systems would be aware of this. The Apple employee who laughs at Kyle. The Jobs figure who is not angry that Kyle clicked agree, but is angry that Kyle keeps clicking agree even after the surgery. These are the voices of people who know exactly what their users are doing doing and are building around that knowledge. The product is designed with the assumption that consent will be given without being read. That assumption is now the foundation of the entire digital economy. Every free app, every social network, every loyalty program, every newsletter, every loot box, every autoplay setting, every data broker, all of them are built on the bet that you will not read. And so far, that bet has paid off every single day for 15 years. Kyle ends the episode changed, but not really changed. He is freed from the human centipede. He goes home, he returns to his life. And if the series followed real internet logic, he would click agree on something again within a week. Because the lesson the episode teaches is not that you should read the fine print. The lesson is that most people will not. And that the people who are counting on that have built machines that depend on it. The user agreement became the real villain of the modern internet. It happens in the dark corner of every screen. And it gets signed by default by every user every single day, without a single tase or van in sight. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. A year or two earlier, another episode had looked at this same gap between the words we put online and the meaning we give them, and landed on a target that was not a company or a platform, but a book that made its readers throw up. Section 4. The Outrage Economy. The Tale of Scrody McBoogerballs and the Overanalysis Epidemic. A month before Human Centipede aired, South Park had already dropped a different kind of warning shot. This one was not about tech companies or tracking. It was about the audience itself. The people on the other end of the screen. The viewers, the readers, the endless rows of strangers online who had developed a strange new hobby in the early 2000s. The hobby was this: take a piece of content, stare at it until it seems to mean something deep, write a long post explaining what it means, share the post, wait for other people to agree. If they disagree, fight them. On March 24th, 2010, Parker and Stone aired an episode called The Tale of Scrody McBoogerballs. It was the second episode of season 14 and the 197th episode overall. The premise is simple on its face, but it builds into one of the most pointed jokes the show has ever told about how the internet era reads things. The episode opens in a classroom. Mr. Garrison is handing out copies of The Catcher in the Rye. This is a real novel. It was written by J.D. Salinger in 1951 and has been one of the most argued about American books ever since. Garrison tells the kids that the book was once banned, that it is full of disturbing and offensive material, that people have done terrible things after reading it. Cartman hears the word banned and his eyes light up. He cannot wait to get his hands on something that dangerous. The whole class is buzzing. A book so awful that it was kept from readers must be, by that logic, the best book ever written. Here's the part that sets the whole episode in motion. The boys actually sit down and read it all the way through. Every word. And when they close the back cover, they look at each other in confusion. They found nothing shocking, nothing scandalous, nothing that matched the buildup. Kyle describes the book as, in plain terms, a whiny teenager complaining about how lame his life is. That is his honest summary. They are annoyed. They feel tricked. A book with that reputation should have been packed with jaw-dropping material, and instead it was a slow ride through one kid feeling sorry for himself. Cartman is the angriest of all. He has been robbed. He has spent actual hours reading a book, which for Cartman is already an outrage, and the payoff was nothing. He proposes a plan. If this dull little story could be called the most offensive book in America, then the four of them could easily write something far more offensive in an afternoon, and they should do exactly that. Not to make money, not to make a point, just to create a book so revolting that the world has no choice but to ban it for real. The montage that follows is important. The boys pile into a room. They giggle, they scribble, they throw out the worst things they can imagine and get each other to laugh. The process is not careful. There is no theme, there is no message, there is no plan. They are simply writing whatever the most disgusting thing they can think of is, one sentence at a time, until they have enough words to call it a book. They title it The Tale of Scrody McBoogerballs. The original draft had a different last name that Cartman came up with, which was even cruder, and Kenny suggested the version that stuck. Then the real plot kicks in. Stan accidentally leaves the rough draft of the book in a drawer at home. His mother Sharon finds it while putting away laundry. She opens it, she reads the first sentence, and she immediately throws up. Literally, violently, all over over the floor. The book is so grotesque that the human body rejects it physically. This becomes a running gag across the whole episode. Every time anyone reads even a line of the book, they vomit. Not a polite vomit, a full body eruption. Characters on television, characters on radio shows, reporters at press conferences. Anyone who attempts to read a passage aloud ends up hosing the studio down. This alone would have been a funny episode, but the real joke is what comes after. The boys panic that their parents are going to find out who wrote it, so when the book is discovered, they frame Butters. They tell Sharon that Butters wrote it while sleepwalking. Butters, who has never read a page of the book, becomes the supposed author, and from that moment on, the whole world takes a very different interest in this pile of disgusting sentences. Because the world does not treat the tale of Scrody McBoogerballs like a pile of disgusting sentences. The world treats it as a masterpiece. Critics read it and vomit, but when they stop vomiting, they talk about it the way people talk about classic literature. Sharon, who threw up reading it, later tells someone that it is the most disgusting thing she has ever read, but the plot is amazing and the characters are so vivid. That line is the thesis of the whole episode. The words on the page are garbage. Everyone admits that the words are garbage, but the audience has decided that the garbage must be secretly brilliant, because why else would it make them feel so strongly? The strength of the reaction becomes proof of the quality. Butters is dragged onto the Today Show on NBC, which in the episode is drawn with the real NBC Peacock logo, but called HBC. Matt Lauer and Meredith Vieira, playing themselves as caricatures, ask Butters about the deep meaning of his book. They vomit halfway through the interview from the sheer ugliness of the material they are reading, and then, between heaves, they go right back to asking him about its themes and influences. Butters has no idea what they are talking about. He has never read the book. He is a child who has been told he wrote something and is now being interviewed on live television about a text he has no connection to. He makes up answers, the hosts love the answers in the moment of airing become quotable, then the episode pushes further. The book gets interpreted through every cultural lens possible. Reviewers claim it is a commentary on society. Academics claim it is a new kind of literature. A man kills the entire Kardashian family in a direct plot parallel to the John Lennon murder that is often blamed on The Catcher in the Rye, claiming the book told him to do it. Morgan Freeman, or at least Trey Parker doing a very clear Morgan Freeman impression, gives a serious reading of a sequel called The Poop That Took a Pee. Sarah Jessica Parker, who is mentioned in the book 465 times and called a transvestite donkey witch, gets no sympathy from the media. Her husband, Matthew Broderick, defends her in a press conference, but the reporters pivot to asking why a transvestite donkey witch is standing next to him. The meaning of the words has collapsed. All that matters is what the audience has decided those words now represent. This is the moment where the episode quietly reveals what it is actually about. It is not really about The Catcher in the Rye. It is not really about Butters. It is about the fact that by 2010, people had begun to do this to everything. Every piece of content, every tweet, every song lyric, every photo, every meme. A real post from a real person is almost never just what it says anymore. It becomes what the internet decides it says. And the internet is not a careful reader. The show lands this point with one of its funniest details. Characters keep declaring what the book means, and every character has a different interpretation. Some think it is about loneliness. Some think it is about politics. Some think it is about the rot of American culture. Some think it is a religious text. Some think it is an attack on celebrities. Some think it is a tribute to celebrities. All of them speak with total confidence. None of them can finish reading more than a sentence without being sick. The book itself is doing nothing. The readers are doing everything. Parker and Stone have been careful over the years about what they say their own work means. They have repeatedly pointed out in interviews and on DVD commentary that they often have no grand message and sometimes just write whatever they think is funny. Some reviewers noticed that this episode felt like a direct response to that. For years, critics had been writing long pieces about the deeper meanings of South Park episodes, many of them finding things in the writing that Parker and Stone flatly said were not there. This episode takes that frustration and turns it into a premise. A group of kids write the most meaningless, most disgusting thing they can think of, and adults keep telling them what it really means. The creators are not in the room. The meaning is invented by the audience, alone, without them. By 2010, the same pattern had begun to take over large portions of the internet. Song lyrics were being picked apart by thousands of commenters. Book covers were being read for hidden symbols. Movie posters were being analyzed in 20-minute videos. Tweets with 3 words were getting threads of hundreds of replies explaining what the poster really meant. The over-analysis machine had cranked up to full power. Parker and Stone looked at that machine and asked a cruel question. What if the thing being analyzed is truly and completely nothing? What if there is literally literally no signal in the noise. Would the machine even stop? The answer the episode gives is that no, it would not stop. The machine does not need a signal. The machine only needs noise. The meaning is being produced by the people watching, not by the people making. There is one extra twist that makes the episode sharper. The real Kardashian family, at the time near the peak of their fame, reportedly praised their own portrayal in the episode after it aired. Think about that for a moment. Their entire family is murdered in the plot by a man inspired by a book called The Poop That Took a Pee, and the Kardashians in real life enjoyed seeing themselves on the show, which is exactly the kind of reception the episode itself was warning about. The outrage economy will take anything and turn it into something good for the person being mocked, as long as the mockery keeps their name in circulation. Being in the tail of Scrody McBoogerballs is bad on paper. Being in the tail of Scrody McBoogerballs means people are talking about you, which is good for business. The very existence of the joke becomes part of what the joke was describing. There is another real detail worth knowing. Parker has said that the core idea for this episode came from his own childhood. He and a friend in junior high once challenged each other to write the most revolting story they could come up with. Not to sell it, not to show anyone, just to gross each other out. Decades later, he turned that memory into the engine of an episode about adult readers doing deep literary analysis on something that started as two kids trying to be gross on purpose. The distance between the writer's intent and the reader's reception had become large enough to build a plot around. The episode aired to about 3,240,000 viewers, making it the most watched cable show of that night. Reviews were mostly positive, with many writers noting that it was doing something sharper than a usual celebrity takedown. Some pointed out that it was also a subtle comment on the endless search for meaning in young adult book series like Twilight and Harry Potter, where fans were producing mountains of analysis that sometimes exceeded the depth of the source material. Others caught the more uncomfortable implication, which is that the show was partly talking about itself. Every episode of South Park has been dissected online in ways that often go far beyond what Parker and Stone have admitted to intending. The boys writing garbage while adults invent meaning out of it is at least partly a portrait of the show's own relationship with its fandom. The lasting power of this episode is that the behavior it makes fun of has only grown since 2010. The over-analysis machine is no longer a strange new habit. It is the default mode of how the internet reads anything. A photo gets 1,000 comments explaining what the poster meant. A sentence gets screenshotted and passed around with angry quote tweets assigning it a meaning the poster never put there. A dead piece of text can go viral for days because people have decided it is important, when the person who posted it has already moved on and does not even remember writing it. Parker and Stone saw that early. They saw it when it was still just a few blogs and a growing forum culture. And instead of writing a mean think piece about it, they wrote a cartoon in which a 10-year-old's fart joke book gets treated like a sacred text and somebody commits mass murder over it. The joke is that this is absurd. The longer joke is that this is now normal. The world has not stopped reading meaning into meaningless things. It has only gotten faster at it. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Over-analysis was the quieter problem. A few years later, something much louder was sitting inside every pocket, and everyone inside South Park was about to realize, all at once, that they had been sharing their lives with it every single day. Section 5. The NSA and the audience that didn't care. Let go, let gov. June of 2013 was one of the strangest months in modern American history. A former government contractor named Edward Snowden flew to Hong Kong with a laptop full of secret files. He handed those files to journalists. The journalists started publishing. What came out over the following weeks was, to put it simply, the biggest spying scandal of the century. The American government, through an agency called the NSA, had been quietly collecting phone records, emails, and online activity from millions of ordinary citizens. Not suspects, not criminals, regular people. People who had done nothing. People whose only connection to a crime was that they owned a phone or used the internet. The story broke. The headlines screamed. Protests were planned. Lawsuits were filed. Politicians demanded answers. And then a very weird thing happened. Within a few months, most Americans stopped caring. Life went on. People kept posting. People kept searching. People kept using the same phones and the same apps. The outrage, which had felt enormous for a brief window, simply faded. On September 25th, 2013, Parker and Stone kicked off season 17 with an episode called Let Go, Let Gov. It was the 238th episode overall. The story arrived 3 months after the Snowden files first hit the news, which in South Park time is actually a long wait. The show usually reacts within a week, but this time Parker Parker and Stone had clearly been watching something more than the initial scandal. They had been watching the audience. They had been watching what happened after the noise died down. And the episode they produced is less about the NSA itself and more about the stranger, sadder truth that sat underneath the whole affair. The plot opens with Cartman being loud and obnoxious on his phone. He is on speakerphone, in public, saying anything that pops into his head. Kyle tells him to stop. Cartman accuses Kyle of invading his privacy by listening. Kyle points out that Cartman is the one broadcasting. This exchange is the thesis of the entire episode in miniature. The people complaining the loudest about being spied on are also the people voluntarily turning their own lives into a public broadcast. From there, Cartman declares that the NSA must be watching him. He decides he has to do something about it. He will become a whistleblower. He will expose them. He will save America. Standing in front of a bathroom mirror, he gives himself a dramatic speech about his new mission. He will use the name Bill Clinton when applying for an NSA job. This is treated as a clever alias by Cartman and everyone around him. The NSA hires him without suspicion. Once he is inside the agency, Cartman begins to monitor emails and phone conversations, which he does mostly to peek at things he shouldn't. He becomes frustrated. The NSA files have everyone in them. Everyone, that is, except Eric Cartman. He is not on their list of potential threats. He demands to know why. He argues with his own boss that he really is a threat. He lists his crimes. He tries to convince the NSA that they have made a huge mistake by not considering him dangerous. The agency refuses to add him. This is already funny, but the episode then reveals its biggest joke. Cartman asks how the NSA is able to track everyone in America. Who is actually doing all this surveillance? The NSA chief takes him to a secret room and shows him the answer. The entire American spy operation, the most feared intelligence agency in the country, is being powered by a captured Santa Claus. Santa has been chained up and wired into the NSA computers. The ancient magic of Santa knowing who is naughty and who is nice has been harvested by the government. Santa is their database. It is a silly image on its face, a cartoon big red man in chains, but the joke underneath is sharper than the joke on the surface. The show is saying that the tool used by the most powerful country on earth to monitor its citizens is the same tool parents have been using to control their children for centuries. The idea of being watched, the idea of being judged, the idea that someone, somewhere, is keeping a list, and your name might be on the wrong side of it. Santa is not a joke about magic. Santa is a joke about how easy it is to get people to behave when they believe they are being seen at all times. Cartman finally reveals himself as a whistleblower. He shouts that he will tell everyone the truth. He will expose the whole operation. He will lead a revolution. He runs out of the building ready to become a hero. He gets to the town square. He announces the secret. He tells the citizens of South Park that the NSA is spying on them, that Santa is their source, that their lives are not private. He waits for the rage. He waits for the outcry. Nothing happens. The town shrugs. People walk past him. A few give polite nods and keep going. Nobody is shocked. Nobody is angry. Nobody even pretends to care. Cartman, the self-appointed savior, has given the speech of his life to an audience that is already fully aware of being watched and simply does not mind. This is the real emotional climax of the episode. Everything up to this point has been a silly spy plot. This is the moment where Parker and Stone land their punch. The audience does not care. The citizens have already made a choice. They know at some level that they are being tracked. They know their phones are listening. They know their accounts have been read, and they have decided that it is fine. They have more important things to do than fight it. While all of this is happening, the second plot line of the episode is running underneath. Butters has been watching the whole situation with confusion. He cannot understand why anyone would complain about the government. The government, in his view, is protecting everyone. He becomes a believer. He starts praying to the government, not as a joke, as a real religious practice. He bows his head, he folds his hands, he asks the government to watch over his friends. And when he needs to confess his prayers and his worries to a higher power, he finds the nearest Department of Motor Vehicles and confesses there. The DMV clerk, looking tired behind bulletproof glass, listens to him the way a priest would listen in a confession booth. This storyline sounds like a one-note joke, but it is doing serious work inside the episode. Butters is, in his own childish way, expressing something real about how modern people have come to treat their tracked devices and accounts. A phone that listens, an app that knows, a platform that records. For many users, these things have quietly taken on a role that used to belong to religion. The all-seeing, all-knowing presence. The record of every action. The judgment at the end. The only difference is that instead of praying to a god, people now submit information to a screen. The comfort is the same. The submission is the same. The belief that something larger than yourself is watching and keeping track is the same. Butters is not a weirdo. Butters is the average user, put into cartoon form. Somewhere in the middle of the episode, Cartman invents a small device that broadcasts his every thought to an online safe space. He calls it Shitter. It is drawn as a tiny microphone strapped near his mouth. Every idea that enters his head is automatically sent out into the world. He invents this as a protest against being monitored. His logic is that if the government is going to watch him anyway, he will make the watching easier for them. He will just say everything out loud, all the time. The joke, of course, is that Shitter is already a thing. Its name is Twitter, and most of its users are not protesting the NSA. They are doing exactly what Cartman is doing, without any political reason at all. They are just broadcasting every thought because the platform rewards them for it. The episode does not need to explain the joke. The audience got it. And the name Shitter became one of the most quoted jokes from that season because every viewer understood that Parker and Stone had just named the thing everyone else was too polite to name. There is another small detail that matters. During the episode, the actor Alec Baldwin shows up with his own version of the same invention. His device broadcasts his private thoughts, which turn out to be unhinged, hateful ramblings aimed at everyone around him. This was based on a real controversy from earlier that year, in which Baldwin had been caught on camera yelling slurs at a photographer. The cartoon Baldwin in the episode keeps using the word faggot in ways that get bleeped out, clearly mocking the real incident. The joke works on two levels. On the surface, it is a jab at one celebrity. Underneath, it is a jab at a much bigger pattern. Baldwin kept getting in trouble because his own thoughts kept escaping into the public. Twitter was turning every famous person into a Baldwin. No filter, no delay, no chance to think before the thought was already out. The ending of the episode is the part that keeps people coming back to it. Cartman gives up. His speech failed. His revolution died before it started. He sits down in the town square, deflated. Butters comes to him with an offer. Come to the DMV. Pray with me. Give up your fight. Submit. Find peace in being watched. And Cartman, who has been the loudest voice in the episode about privacy and freedom, nods and follows Butters through the doors. The last image is of Cartman on his knees, folding his hands, accepting the watcher, accepting that he is being monitored, accepting that he does not actually mind, because no one around him minds. That final shot is the coldest joke South Park has ever made about the internet. The viewer knows that the joke is not about the NSA at all. The joke is about us. We were told our phones were listening. We kept our phones. We were told our emails were being stored. We kept our emails. We were told our searches were being logged. We kept searching. We did not rise up. We did not switch to encrypted services in large numbers. We did not throw out our devices. We went back to posting. We went back to scrolling. We went back to clicking agree. And within a few years, we stopped bringing up the Snowden files in normal conversation at all. The outrage had a short life. The surveillance had a permanent one. Reviews of Let Gov at the time were mixed. Some critics felt the episode was preachy or did not go far enough. IGN gave it a 6.7 out of 10. The AV Club was harsher, giving it a C-. Several writers argued that Parker and Stone had an easy target and did not do enough with it. Looking at the episode now, over a decade later, the critics missed what the show was actually doing. The episode is not trying to be a blistering attack on the NSA. It is trying to describe a moment in American life. The moment when a generation of users discovered on paper that every piece of their digital life had been watched and then shrugged. The shrug is the story. The shrug is what Let Gov is capturing. And the shrug is what the angry reviewers at the time either did not see or refused to admit they were part of. One last piece of the episode deserves a mention. Cartman, before his trip to the NSA, has a running obsession with being the center of attention. He is loud. He wants everyone to look at him. He wants to be on the news. He wants to lead the movement. By the end, he realizes that none of that matters. The audience is not going to applaud him. The citizens are not going to riot. The world has moved past the idea of being outraged by this particular thing. And so he sits down and accepts the system. The character arc of Cartman in this episode is, without Parker and Stone ever spelling it out, the character arc of the internet user. Loud at first, angry at the reveal, exhausted by the silence, eventually just accepting that the watching is part of the deal now. That acceptance became the foundation for everything that came after. Every feature on every app that tracks your location, your spending, your sleep, your steps, your photos, your voice, your eye movements, none of it was hidden. All of it was disclosed in the agreements nobody reads. And because the 2013 2013 outrage was followed by the 2014 shrug, the companies learned that they could keep going, they could keep building, they could keep collecting, and the users would mostly not push back. Let Go Let Gov was Parker and Stone looking at that shrug and writing a funeral sermon for a protest that never happened. It was not a warning about the government, it was a report card on the citizens, and the grade was not good. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. A year later, though, the show would turn its aim on something much smaller than a national spy agency. A single little app sitting on a single little phone, running a business model that was quietly doing more damage to more people than most scandals ever had. Section 6. Freemium isn't free. When South Park called out the industry it was being pitched. In the middle of 2014, Trey Parker and Matt Stone were sitting in a room with a company that wanted to make them rich. Several companies actually, one after another. These companies were in the business of making mobile phone games, and they had come to pitch an idea, a South Park game, free to download. Put it on every phone in America. The boys would be in it, Cartman would be in it, all the usual fart jokes would be in it. Parker and Stone would barely have to lift a finger. The money would roll in. The catch was the kind of game they wanted to make. Not a regular game where you pay once and then play forever. A freemium game. The word means free at the start, but designed to hook players into spending money little by little, forever, through tiny purchases inside the app. $5 here, $10 there, a special weapon, a new costume, an extra life, a speed up to avoid waiting an hour for a building to finish. Each purchase small enough to seem harmless, added up, enough to drain a bank account. Parker and Stone did not like what they were hearing. In the commentary they recorded later for the DVD of this episode, they admitted it openly. They thought the whole category of freemium games was, in their words, pretty offensive. The way the games were built felt to them like a setup for exploitation. So instead of accepting the pitch right away, they decided to do what they have always done when something confuses or annoys them. They studied it. They read about it. They talked to people who worked in the business. They dug into the numbers. And the more they learned, the more they believed this was not a small thing. This was a massive, well-designed machine for turning vulnerable people into revenue. Then they did something unusual. They took their research and turned it into one of the sharpest episodes the show has ever made. Freemium Isn't Free aired on November 5th, 2014. It was the 6th episode of season 18 and the 253rd episode overall. Reviews praised it at the time, and the following year it was nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award in the category of Outstanding Animated Program, competing against shows like The Simpsons, Bob's Burgers, Archer, and the eventual winner, Over the Garden Wall. Parker and Stone themselves, in interviews after the season, called this one of their favorite episodes they had made. The plot starts small. At school, Jimmy runs into Kyle and tells him about a great new mobile game. It is called Terrence and Phillip Give Us Your Money, which is already a joke. But Jimmy says it in a tone of voice that sounds like a commercial. He tells Kyle it is totally free. He tells Kyle everyone is playing it. He tells Kyle he should download it right now, because why wouldn't he? Jimmy's whole delivery is strangely salesy. Kyle does not notice. Kyle downloads the game. A few scenes later, half the school is playing it. The game itself is designed to feel like the real mobile games people were obsessed with in 2014. Two very popular ones at the time were The Simpsons Tapped Out and Family Guy The Quest for Stuff, both from other animated shows. Both worked on the same simple loop. Build a little town, wait a few minutes or hours for buildings to finish, earn pretend coins, buy more buildings, repeat. Skip the waiting by paying real money. The episode shows Stan trying the game, getting hooked, and quickly spending real dollars to skip the waits. His parents discover that he has already spent $489. Sharon is horrified. Randy is horrified. Randy jumps immediately into the idea that his son must have inherited a gambling addiction from his father, Grandpa Marvin. This starts a family investigation. Marvin is indeed an addict. He cannot stop feeding slot machines. The episode begins to draw a line between addiction to slot machines, addiction to gambling, and addiction to mobile games. The line becomes clearer with every scene. Meanwhile, up in Canada, the real plot is being told. Terrence and Phillip themselves visit the Canadian Department of Mobile Gaming, furious that a game using their likenesses has been launched without their permission. They meet with the Minister of Mobile Gaming and the Prince of Canada, who are running the whole operation. And in one of the smartest monologues the show has ever written, the minister sits the two comedians down and explains in plain speech how freemium games actually work. He tells them in his thick Canadian accent that the truth of the freemium business is that most people who download these games never pay a cent. That is not a problem. That is the entire design. The real money is not in the many. The real money is in the few. It is all about, he says, finding the heaviest users and extracting the most amount of cash from them. That is how you get addicts to pay $200 for a game that is not even worth 40 cents. He is calm when he says this. He is not hiding it. He is explaining it the way a factory manager might explain a production line. This monologue, in a single speech, educates the viewer on a hidden rule of modern tech. The industry has a name for the heavy users these games target. They call them whales. A whale is a single person who spends far more than any other player. In most freemium games, a tiny number of whales are responsible for the large majority of the total money the game earns. The minister does not use the word whale in the episode, but he describes the pattern with shocking accuracy. He even goes further. He mentions the Pareto principle. 80% of revenue comes from 20% of customers. In a DVD commentary for the episode, Matt Stone said he had been taught this principle by his own father, who worked in finance. Parker and Stone kept thinking about how that rule applied to alcohol, to gambling, and to mobile games. An alcohol company makes most of its money from the few people who drink the most. A casino makes most of its money from the few people who gamble the most. A freemium game makes most of its money from the few people who cannot stop spending. The whole system is built around a small group of people with a real problem. And the system needs those people to keep having that problem. Their pain is the product. Inside the episode, a brilliant twist follows. Kyle realizes that Jimmy has been pushing the game too hard. He and the other boys confront him. Jimmy breaks down and admits the truth. He never actually played Terrence and Phillip Give Us Your Money. He is being paid by the Canadian government to promote it to his classmates. He is a pusher. The cartoon word used in the episode is pusher, the same word used for drug dealers. Parker and Stone are drawing a straight line from the mobile game industry to street-level drug selling, and they are daring anyone watching to say the comparison is unfair. Jimmy even admits why he took the job in the first place. He owes money from his own freemium game addiction. He is paying off debts to one freemium game by pushing another freemium game on his friends. It is a perfect loop of exploitation, and by the time Jimmy says it out loud, the viewer realizes that the whole system is built to feed itself. The episode goes one step further. Stan, desperate to get clean, seeks out a higher power. He follows Jimmy's advice, which is based on the same advice given in real 12-step recovery programs like Alcoholics Anonymous. What he gets is a visit from Satan himself. Satan appears in a parody of the 1997 film Devil's Advocate, which Parker has said in commentary is one of his favorite movies. And what Satan does in this scene is, on paper, the most educational moment South Park has ever produced. Satan explains dopamine to Stan, not in a joke, in a calm, friendly voice. He tells Stan that dopamine is a chemical released in the brain when a person does something pleasurable, eating, sex, a win, that animals need dopamine to survive, so that they are motivated to eat and reproduce. That humans have progressed to the point where they have access to almost anything that feels good whenever they want, and this has created a problem. The system in the brain that was supposed to motivate survival can now be hijacked by things that look like rewards, but are not actually good for the person getting them. Likes, wins in a video game, purchases in an app. Satan tells Stan that there is nothing spiritually wrong with him. He is not a bad person. He is a human with a brain that is reacting normally to an environment designed to hijack that brain. This whole scene plays as comedy, but the science inside it is real. The mobile game industry has openly discussed, in internal design documents and conference talks, how freemium games are built to exploit dopamine loops. The lights, the sounds, the tiny rewards for doing nothing, the constant messages that say, "Congratulations, you earned 10 gold coins. You are really good at this, guy." All of it is engineered, not in theory, in practice, by paid professionals. Satan in the episode is explaining to a cartoon child the exact mechanism that real game designers get paid to build. The story eventually resolves itself in a big chaotic finale where Satan possesses Stan, fights the Canadian devil, and destroys the infrastructure of the game from the inside. The kids tweet out the truth about how these games work. The information trends. Terrence and Phillip are furious at the Canadian minister for betraying their likenesses. Canada agrees, reluctantly, to stop. The episode ends with Stan and Grandpa Marvin sitting down together to play a traditional board game as a healthier replacement. Randy walks in, watches them for a moment, and then asks if they want to put some money down on the game. Stan's head slams onto the table. The addiction runs in the family, and the family cannot see itself. That final joke is the quiet thesis of the whole episode. Addiction is not a personal flaw. It is a pattern that can be passed down, designed around, and exploited by any business smart enough to do it. Parker and Stone are not making fun of Stan for spending $26,000 on a mobile game. They are making fun of a world that builds products to make Stan spend $26,000 on a mobile game. There is one part of the aftermath of this episode that nobody can leave out, because it is the cleanest self-own in South Park history. 3 years after Freemium Isn't Free aired, in October of 2017, Parker and Stone released a mobile game called South Park Phone Destroyer. It was free to download, it had in-app purchases, it had a familiar loop of rewards, upgrades, and small spends. It was, in almost every technical way, a freemium game. The same category of game the episode had attacked. This is not hidden. Fans noticed immediately. Reviews pointed it out. The word hypocrisy came up more than once. Parker and Stone have not done detailed interviews defending the decision, and that is the point. They did not pretend the game was different. They did not claim it was special. They simply made it, put it out, and let the contradictions sit there. Some fans were angry. Some fans understood the joke. The cleverest reading is that the whole thing is part of the bit. Freemium Isn't Free argued that the industry was built to hook people, and then the people who made the episode went ahead and joined that industry, which is, in its own way, a kind of proof of the original argument. These systems are so profitable and so hard to resist that even the people who write a whole episode against them will eventually take the deal. The temptation does not spare anyone, not even the people smart enough to see the trap. One more real detail worth pointing out. In the years after this episode aired, it has been cited in genuinely serious conversations about consumer protection and game design. Legal reviews of loot boxes, which are randomized paid items in video games, have referenced Freemium Isn't Free as a piece of public awareness about the issue. Scholars studying game addiction have pointed to the episode as an early piece of mainstream entertainment that treated the topic with real weight. Some countries have since moved to regulate loot boxes and aggressive in-game purchases, with Belgium and the Netherlands going so far as to ban them in certain forms. None of that regulation happened because of the episode, but the episode contributed to the slow shift in how regular people talked about these designs. A cartoon helped move the needle, even just a little, in a conversation that governments would eventually be forced to join. Freemium Isn't Free is the South Park episode where the show is at its most clearly educational. It explains math, it explains biology, it explains the Pareto principle, it explains addiction. It teaches the viewer about dopamine through a cartoon devil, and it does all of this without once being boring because it wraps the teaching inside a story about a kid who spent $26,000 on a free game. The trick is not just that the jokes are funny, the trick is that the jokes land exactly on the point being taught. When Stan's phone lights up with a message that reads, "Congratulations, you earned 10 Canadian coins. You are really good at this guy," the viewer feels the hook. Because they have read that exact kind of message 1,000 times before on their own phone, the cartoon is not exaggerating. The cartoon is describing. That is why this episode, 10 years later, still feels current. The games have gotten bigger. The loops have gotten tighter. The whales have gotten bigger fish to catch them. But the mechanism Parker and Stone took apart in 2014 is the same mechanism running today, in the same phones, on the same people. A small percentage of heavy users keeping an entire industry alive. A larger group of casual users pretending they are not part of the pattern, and a handful of creators in the middle, trying to decide whether to name the problem or sign the pitch. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The game was the surface. The system was the story. And by the next year, the show would find a way to point at its own audience and start asking an even harder question about who was really doing the rehashing. Section 7. Hashtag REHASH. The moment South Park admitted it was old. A month after Freemium Isn't Free aired, South Park did something it had almost never done in its history. It admitted that it might be out of touch. The episode was called Hashtag REHASH. It aired on December 3rd, 2014, as the 9th episode of Season 18 and the 256th episode overall. It was written and directed by Trey Parker, and on the DVD commentary later, both Parker and Stone said plainly that making this episode made them feel old. That was the starting point. Not anger, not mockery, just a quiet, uncomfortable recognition that the world had moved past them in a direction they did not fully understand. The plot has two threads, and both of them are about people being replaced by newer versions of themselves. The main thread belongs to Kyle. He has bought a new video game and he wants to play it with his little brother Ike, not alone, with him, in the living room, on the couch, the way brothers have played video games together for decades. Kyle comes home full of energy, ready for a normal afternoon. Ike is not interested. Ike is sitting in his bedroom, on his tablet, watching someone else play a video game online. The person Ike is watching is PewDiePie. Not a cartoon version of PewDiePie, the real one. The real PewDiePie recorded his own voice for this episode. In 2014, he was the single biggest YouTube star on the planet, with tens of millions of subscribers. Most adults watching South Park that night had never heard of him. Most kids had. Kyle cannot understand why Ike would rather watch a stranger play a game than play the actual game himself. He tries to get Ike to switch, Ike refuses. Kyle invites Ike's friends over, thinking a group of kids will get excited about a real console in a real living room. The friends show up, they all go into Ike's bedroom, they all pull out their own devices, they all watch different people play different games on different channels. Nobody plays the actual game. Kyle and Stan stand in the hallway confused, being called grandpas by children under them. This is the quiet, emotional center of the episode. Not a joke about YouTubers, a joke about the living room dying. For Kyle's entire life, video games have been a thing you do with other people, in a shared space, sitting next to each other. And now, in one generation, that has vanished. The kids are in the same house. They are in the same bedroom, but they are not with each other. They are each alone with a screen, watching a stranger. Kyle declares that his living room is dying. He says it with real sadness. The line is supposed to be funny. It lands more like a eulogy. While that is happening, Cartman sees his opportunity. He watches Ike watching PewDiePie and realizes that this is a business. Anyone can do it. Cartman launches his own channel called Cartman Bra, and he starts filming himself reacting to videos of Kyle and Stan. He laughs too loud. He makes faces. He yells at the screen. He says nothing useful. He adds nothing to the content. He is literally, in the title of the episode, rehashing. And kids love it. Subscribers pour in. Ike becomes one of his viewers. Kyle loses his own brother to a channel where his own brother's best friend is mocking him. The joke here is uncomfortably precise. Parker and Stone are describing a business model that almost every adult in 2014 thought was ridiculous. Someone records themselves watching something. People watch that recording. The original creator of the thing gets nothing. The person sitting in front of a camera gets millions. By framing it through Cartman, the most self-obsessed and shameless character on the show, the episode asks a question most media critics were too polite to ask at the time. What kind of personality does this job reward? And the answer the show gives, through Cartman, is clear. Loud people, hollow people, people with no original ideas and unlimited confidence. Cartman Bra is not a parody of one YouTuber. Cartman Bra is a diagram of the traits the platform lifts up. While Kyle's world shrinks and Cartman's channel grows, the second plot line of the episode runs in parallel. This one belongs to Randy. Randy, who across season 18 has been secretly living a double life as the pop star Lord, is trying to figure out what has happened to the music industry. His producer tells him that the future of music is not about songs. It is about spectacle. It is about dead celebrities being brought back on stage as holograms. It is about Michael Jackson performing again, years after his death, through a projector and a trick of light. Randy is horrified. He watches Iggy Azalea perform with a hologram of Michael Jackson at a concert and realizes that something real is being lost. Not quality, something harder to name. The feeling that a performance is a real person, alive, in the same room, giving you something of themselves. Holograms do not give anything. Holograms are a recording wearing a new costume. The audience cheers anyway. This parallel is the actual thesis of the episode. Both threads are about the same thing. Both threads are about culture eating its own leftovers. Ike watches someone else play a game instead of playing the game himself. Concert audiences watch a projection of a dead singer instead of a real one. Cartman Bra reacts to videos instead of making anything original. The machine does not need anything new. The machine only needs something old, repackaged again, and sent back out. Everything is a response to something else. Nothing is a beginning. Rehashing, over and over. The title of the episode is the argument. A rehash is when someone takes something that already exists and redoes it in a slightly different way. The hashtag in front of the word is the 2014 internet's way of labeling anything. Put a hashtag on it, call it content, push it out. The two symbols together, sitting right next to each other, tell you what the episode believes about its moment. There is a specific joke in the middle of the episode that many viewers at the time did not catch, but which plays sharper now. Cartman's Cartman Bra channel becomes so successful that his face starts appearing in other people's homes, uninvited. In a parody of the 2014 John Johnny Depp film Transcendence, Cartman Bra begins to spread across the internet like a virus, popping up in every screen everywhere. He cannot be stopped. Kids are watching him during dinner. Parents are finding him on their tablets. His face is on televisions, phones, laptops, everywhere at once. It is supposed to be a cartoon gag about one bad YouTuber taking over the world. It is now a nearly exact description of the algorithm, the recommendations that follow you from one device to another, the creator who shows up on your feed even when you did not ask for them, the face you cannot escape because every platform has decided you should see that face. The episode, in a single gag, predicted the way online creators would eventually colonize every screen in a user's life. Cartman's channel is not just popular, Cartman's channel is inescapable. And in the real world, that is now how most big creators operate. You do not go find them, they are delivered to you, constantly, whether you want them or not. The episode ends with a weak resolution. Kyle starts his own counter trend, a hashtag called #WeBelieveInYou, aimed at getting people to believe in real things again. PewDiePie himself ends up defeating Cartman by streaming a new game release, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, which pulls all the eyeballs away from Cartman Bra. The real PewDiePie saves the day. The cartoon version of the problem is solved by the real person who, in real life, is also the biggest example of the problem. That contradiction is not cleaned up. The episode leaves it hanging. Reviews at the time were mixed. IGN gave the episode a 7.8. The AV Club gave it a B+. Some felt the episode was trying to hit too many targets at once. Some felt it was one of the weakest in the season. A lot of reviewers missed the key layer underneath the jokes, which is that this was the first South Park episode where the show itself seemed unsure of its place in the culture. That uncertainty is the part that matters now. Go back to the DVD commentary. Parker and Stone say it openly. They felt old making this one. They were watching their audience split in half. An older audience that remembered living rooms and couches. A younger audience that had grown up watching other people play games, that had never known a world where you had to wait for something to air, that saw the old model of television as something their grandparents used. South Park was a television show. It aired on a channel. It required you to be in front of a set at a specific time or download the episode later. Everything about its structure was from the old world. The younger audience was building a new world where South Park was not a given, where a 22-minute animated show with a story and a beginning and an end was itself becoming a rehash, an old format, a thing people used to love. Parker and Stone felt this. The episode is, in part, them pressing on that feeling like you press on a bruise. There is one more detail that makes the episode stand out as a turning point. Parker and Stone said in commentary that #rehash was originally planned as two separate episodes, one about PewDiePie, one about Lord and holograms. They could not figure out how to end either one on its own, so they combined the two stories into a single episode and let them speak to each other. The fact that they could not finish either story by itself and had to lean them against each other to make them stand up is strangely fitting. The episode about cultural exhaustion was, behind the scenes, an episode about creative exhaustion. They could not close the loop on either idea separately, so they stuck them together and called it #rehash. Over the following years, the episode has aged in a specific way. Viewers who first watched it in 2014 thought it was a decent but slightly scattered episode. Viewers who watch it now, after a decade of watching creators colonize every screen, after watching their own kids or younger siblings prefer reaction content to source content, after watching concerts lean harder into holograms and AI vocals, see the episode differently. The jokes land harder. The ending feels less weak. The whole thing reads like a show pointing at a wave that was still forming off the coast and saying loudly, that wave is bigger than we are. There is a comment that sits at the top of a lot of rewatch reactions to this episode online. The comment says something like, this one has aged flawlessly because now everyone has realized how annoying their childhood favorite YouTubers are. That comment is doing more work than it looks like. The episode survived because the thing it was describing did not go away. The pattern only got more obvious. The youngest kids watching South Park in 2014 are now adults. They have lived the full arc. They started as Ike. They ended up paying attention to creators who now remind them of Cartman. And when they come back to this episode, they see themselves on the screen in a way they could not have seen the first time. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. #rehash was Parker and Stone catching a glimpse of the door closing behind them. The next year, they would stop looking backwards and start swinging at the people holding the door. Section 8. Safe Spaces and the Execution of Reality. The Season 19 PC Principal arc. 9 months after #rehash, South Park came back for its 19th season, swinging at a target it had mostly dodged until that point: the entire online outrage machine. Not one platform, not one app, the whole growing system of internet moralism that had taken over large parts of public conversation by 2015. Hashtags, pile-ons, public shaming, apologies, the industry of being offended, and the industry of being the person who points out that someone should be offended. Season 19 premiered on September 16th, 2015, with an episode called Stunning and Brave. It introduced a new character. His name was PC Principal. He arrived at South Park Elementary wearing a backwards cap, muscles packed into a tight polo shirt, shouting about minority representation and calling everyone bro. His first scene is a speech to the students and staff in which he explains that he is sick and tired of how groups are mistreated in society, and that this school is lost in a time warp. He hands out detentions for microaggressions. He slams his fist on desks. He shoves people. A detail from behind the scenes makes this character even more interesting. Parker and Stone originally planned to kill PC Principal off at the end of that first episode. He was supposed to be a one-time joke, a guy who shows up, makes a scene, gets destroyed by the plot. But as they worked on him, they liked him too much, so they kept him. And by keeping him, they set up the longest, most connected story arc the show had ever attempted to that point. Season 19 is often called the season that felt most like a single movie. The episodes were not separate, they built on each other. A small story in episode 1 would become a bigger story by episode 5, and by the finale, it would turn into a full conspiracy. The season is about political correctness on its surface, but the real argument, the one that takes the full 10 episodes to land, is something much bigger. The real argument is that online outrage and online advertising had become the same machine. To get to that argument, the season moves through several stages. The first 3 episodes set up the world. PC Principal and his fraternity, known as the PC Bros, arrive in town like a cleanup crew. They punish anyone who says the wrong word. They demand that every old joke be retired. Kyle, in episode 1, gets into trouble for not calling Caitlyn Jenner a hero. The town pivots. Adults start walking on eggshells. The conversation shifts from what people actually believe to what people are allowed to say. Then comes episode 5, Safe Space. It aired on October 21st, 2015, as the 262nd episode of the series overall. This is the episode that most viewers remember when they remember season 19. It is also the one that lands the season's emotional punch. The plot starts with Cartman. He has posted a picture of himself online, wearing only underwear, lifting weights. He has put a hashtag on it that brags about how ripped he is. The internet responds the way the internet responds. Hundreds of comments pour in, calling him fat. Cartman is crushed. He cries in PC Principal's office. He cannot handle the truth of what strangers think of him. PC Principal comes up with a solution. He picks a student to filter Cartman's social media. That student will read every comment before Cartman sees it, and only print out the positive ones. The negative ones will be hidden. Cartman will be protected. The job is offered to Kyle. Kyle refuses and takes 2 weeks of detention. The job is offered to Wendy. She refuses and takes 2 weeks of detention. The job lands on Butters, who is afraid of being grounded if he gets detention, and so he accepts. From there, the workload grows. Steven Seagal comes in and claims to have also been a victim of body shaming. Butters is assigned to filter his social media too. Then plus-size models. Then Vin Diesel. Then Demi Lovato. Then Lena Dunham. Within days, Butters is staying up all night reading thousands and thousands of ugly comments from strangers, filtering them out so that a group of celebrities and one cartoon bully can feel safe online. He stops sleeping, he starts hallucinating, and eventually, in one of the darkest images the show has ever drawn, he jumps out of a window at school and is hospitalized. Read that again. A child tried to kill himself because he was being forced to absorb the ugliness of internet comments so that other people would not have to see them. That is the plot of the episode. Most people at the time watched this as a joke about celebrities wanting protection from criticism, but the real subject is not the celebrities. The real subject is Butters. He is a stand-in for a group of people most viewers had never heard of in 2015. Content moderators. Real human beings, usually underpaid, usually in poor conditions, often in poor countries, whose job is to look at the worst posts on the internet all day so that the rest of us do not have to. Real moderators have reported severe mental health damage from this work. Some have developed symptoms similar to soldiers coming back from war. The episode made this real. 5 years before most Americans even knew the job existed. A side plot runs in parallel. Randy keeps being asked at Whole Foods whether he wants to donate $1 to starving children. He does not want to. The cashier keeps pressuring him. The pressure is embarrassing. The pressure is public. The pressure is, in Randy's words, a new kind of shaming. Randy goes home and makes a commercial. He calls for something called Shameless America, where no one can be shamed for anything ever. He stands next to actual starving children in the commercial to make his point. He is the villain of his own plot and does not notice. The symbol the episode invents is a character called Reality, a plain-looking man in a mustache, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, who represents the actual truth of life. Reality shows up at Randy's fundraiser dinner and tells everyone the hard truths they have been ignoring. He tells them they are in denial. He tells them what they have done to Butters in their efforts to avoid hearing anything negative. He tells them that the world cannot be rebuilt to fit their feelings. The town's response to this speech is the scene that anchors the whole season. They do not argue with him. They do not consider his words. They hold a public hanging. They string Reality up in the town square and execute him in front of a cheering crowd. Butters is the one who pulls the lever. The boy who almost died filtering their feelings is the boy who kills the character named Reality for daring to describe what was actually happening. That image in a cartoon aimed at adults is one of the most pointed satirical moments of the decade. Reality as a concept was being hanged by an audience that would rather feel safe than be informed, and South Park drew the hanging on screen. The season does not stop there, it keeps building. Episode 8, Sponsored Content, which aired on November 18th, 2015, introduces a new twist. The season reveals that online advertising has begun to develop a kind of intelligence. The ads are starting to anticipate what people want. They are learning. They are inserting themselves into real news. Jimmy, the school newspaper editor, is shown to have a rare ability to tell the difference between a real news story and a sponsored ad. Most people have lost that ability completely. The ads are now indistinguishable from real life. A student at the school named Leslie turns out to be an ad herself, not a person with an ad attached. An ad that has learned to walk and talk like a person. The concept sounds ridiculous when you describe it out loud. Inside the show, it works, because the joke is that the ads have gotten so good at blending in that nobody in town notices. Leslie sits in classes, she befriends people, she walks around like any other student, and she is a commercial. The season finale, PC Principal Final Justice, which aired on December 9th, 2015, pulls the whole argument together. The town has been gentrified, the language has been cleaned up, the advertising has taken over, and PC Principal realizes that he has been used. The PC Bros, the fraternity he thought was a force for good, have been working with the ads all along. The cleanup of language was not just about language. It was about removing anything in public life that might slow down a purchase. If people are not allowed to criticize, they are not allowed to question. If they are not allowed to question, they are easier to sell to. Online moralism was a marketing tool. A review by Dan Caffrey of the AV Club at the time caught what most other reviewers missed. He wrote that the show had moved past simply making fun of social justice warriors and was now examining how their mindset could leave them open to corporate manipulation. That line sums up the season. Parker and Stone were not calling PC Principal wrong about wanting fairness. They were calling him naive for thinking that his movement was not already being used by people who wanted something very different. This is the harder claim underneath the whole arc. The outrage economy and the advertising economy are not separate. They feed each other. Every viral shaming is a traffic event. Every hashtag is a data point. Every public apology is a marketing cycle. Every online movement is tracked, measured, and turned into audience segments that can be sold to brands. The louder the outrage, the more valuable the attention. Season 19 is built on this one uncomfortable argument, and it sells it by stretching the point across 10 episodes instead of cramming it into one. The strongest detail in the whole arc is small and easy to miss. PC Principal, after the finale, keeps his job. He is not removed. He is not punished. He says he will keep fighting for what he believes in now that he knows the ads are also part of the game. He does not quit. He just keeps going. That ending is a darker ending than most viewers caught. The show is saying that once the outrage system and the advertising system have merged, they do not unmerge. You cannot uninstall them. You just keep living inside them, aware now that everything you say in public is feeding something you did not sign up for. The aftermath of this season matters for the rest of the show. PC Principal stayed. He kept appearing for the next 10 years. In later seasons, he would have children who were born already politically correct, called the PC babies, who show up crying at anything they find offensive. These characters are sometimes played for simple laughs, but their origin is the season 19 argument. They are the next generation of the merged machine, born inside it, sensitive to everything by default, useful to the advertisers by design. Season 19 is the South Park season that aged the best out of the last 15 years of the show. Viewers in 2015 thought it was about political correctness. Viewers watching now, after a full decade of ad tech scandals, data leaks, corporate rainbow washing during Pride Month, and boycotts that somehow always help the company being boycotted, can see the full picture. The outrage was real. The feelings were real. But the machine using those feelings was already in place, and the machine was not embarrassed by any of it. It was making money. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The outrage economy was the second layer. A year later, the show would dig one layer deeper, into the quiet rooms where the people actually running that outrage lived, and find somebody nobody expected sitting at the keyboard. Section 9. The troll was your dad all along. The Season 20 Gerald Broflovsky arc. Season 20 of South Park is the single most ambitious thing Parker and Stone ever attempted. 10 episodes, all connected, built around one question. What does an internet troll actually look like in real life? Not the answer the internet gives itself, which usually involves lonely teenagers in dark basements. A real answer. Grounded, specific, uncomfortable. The season ran from September 14th, 2016 to December 7th, 2016. The episodes in order were Member Berries, Skank Hunt, The Damned, Wieners Out, Douche and a Danish, Fort Collins, OGs, Members Only, Not Funny, and The End of Serialization as We Know It. The second episode, Skank Hunt, is the one where the arc really begins. It aired on September 21st, 2016 as the 269th episode overall, and in the final minute of Member Berries, the night before, the show had already dropped the twist that would define the rest of the year. The troll who had been attacking the women of South Park online was not a student, not a stranger, not some shadowy figure. It was Gerald Broflovsky, Kyle's dad. Let that sit for a second. Gerald is a lawyer, a husband, a father of two, a middle-aged, polite, slightly nervous Jewish man who had been in the background of the show for nearly 20 years. He is not a villain. He has never been a villain. He is the kind of character you forget about between appearances because he is so normal. And in season 20, Parker and Stone revealed that he has been going home at night, sitting down at his computer with a glass of wine, and pouring the ugliest possible comments into the internet under the name Skank Hunt 42. He harasses women. He photoshops inappropriate images onto family photos. He targets strangers he has never met. He does this for fun. And in one of the most memorable sequences in the show's history, he does it to the sound of the 1976 rock song Smokin' by the band Boston, playing over a montage of him typing furiously while grinning from ear to ear. The montage matters. Most shows, when they introduce a character doing something dark, use sad music, dramatic music, something that tells the audience this person is suffering. Parker and Stone do the opposite. They score Gerald's trolling sessions with classic rock. They draw his face full of joy. They show him the next morning taking a happy walk through town with his groceries, almost getting hit by a car and a bike, and laughing through it all. Gerald is not miserable. Gerald is having the best time of his life. This is the thesis of the whole arc, delivered through music and animation alone. The show is telling you, without using a single line of dialogue, that trolling is fun for the troll. Not a cry for help, not a symptom of depression. Fun. An active pleasure. A hobby, the same way someone else might play golf or build model trains. Gerald comes home from a long day of being a decent lawyer and a decent husband, and then he goes upstairs and tortures strangers for entertainment. And the show refuses to let you believe he is broken. He is not broken. He is a man enjoying himself. The plot keeps building from there. Gerald's trolling gets attention. A Danish woman named Freya Olegard, a former Olympic volleyball medalist and breast cancer survivor, runs a website for breast cancer awareness. Gerald attacks it. She makes a public statement saying she will not be intimidated. Gerald, thrilled by the challenge, targets her even harder. He and other trolls send cruel questions to her on live television, mocking her illness. Freya, unable to take any more, kills herself. Her death triggers the rest of the season. Denmark responds by building a service called trolltrace.com. The service will reveal every user's full internet history to every person they know. Everything they ever searched. Everything they ever posted anonymously. Everything they ever looked at. The entire country of Denmark is ready to launch this service globally, which would destroy millions of lives overnight, because every adult in the world has things in their browsing history they would rather keep private. The panic in South Park is instant. Randy, Gerald, and the other dads realize they could lose their marriages, their jobs, their children, all within one afternoon. The rest of the season is Gerald trying to keep his identity secret, his family trying to understand who he really is, and the town of South Park heading into full collapse as the threat of Troll Trace gets closer. Several moments in the arc deserve a direct look. The first is a small scene where Gerald meets another troll named Dildo Schwaggins. They bond. They talk about why they do what they do. Gerald gives Dildo his personal theory of trolling. His theory is not angry. It is not political. It is light. He says in plain words that the whole point is to push other people's buttons, and that it is not mean if it is hilarious. That line, "It is not mean if it is hilarious," is the single clearest statement of the troll's own self-image ever written into a television show. Trolls do not see themselves as cruel. They see themselves as comedians. The pain they cause is, in their own heads, a byproduct of a good joke. That is why arguing with them never works. They are not operating from the same idea of decency as the person they are hurting. They are playing a different game and calling it humor. The second is Sheila, Gerald's wife and Kyle's mom. When she starts to suspect something is off, Gerald covers up his trolling by pretending to have a disgusting, embarrassing sexual fetish instead. He lets his wife walk in on him, fakes a humiliating moment, and allows her to pity him rather than face the truth. He would rather she think he is a pervert than think he is a troll. The show is making a point with this. Trolling, in Gerald's mind, is the more shameful secret. Worse than a weird fetish. Worse than a private perversion. The act of going online to hurt strangers is something he will go to enormous lengths to hide, even as he continues to enjoy doing it. The third is the ending. In the last episode, Gerald travels to the Troll Trace headquarters in Denmark and comes face to face with the CEO, a man named Leonard Bedrager. Bedrager turns out to be a troll too, on a global scale. His plan was never about justice for victims. His plan was to use Troll Trace to expose everyone's secrets, turn every country against its own people, and watch the world burn. Gerald, to stop him, kicks him in the crotch and throws him off a bridge to his death. The plan collapses. The internet is temporarily shut down by an explosion at a SpaceX facility in another plot line. Gerald escapes. That ending was not well received by everyone. Several reviews at the time complained that the arc had built up to something enormous and then simply ended. No punishment, no justice, no grand reveal. Gerald gets away. His family never finds out. He goes back to his life. Kyle, his own son, in the final episode, is shown trying to restart the troll network himself, which means that even inside the family, the behavior is spreading rather than being stopped. Looking back now, that ending is the most honest part of the whole season. Real trolls do not get caught. Real trolls do not face consequences. Real trolls log off, eat dinner with their families, and come back the next night. The show could have given the audience the satisfaction of seeing Gerald exposed. Parker and Stone chose not to, because a Gerald who gets caught is a fantasy. A Gerald who does not get caught is the truth of how these systems actually run. One review, published by Uprocks after Skank Hunt aired, got the season's argument right very early. The writer said that nothing will ever paint an internet troll as accurately as Kyle's dad did in that episode. That line has aged even better than the writer probably expected. Every investigation into who the worst accounts online actually belong to in the years since has found something similar. Trolls are not who people picture. They are regular adults. They have jobs. They have families. They have reputations in their towns. They donate to charity. They coach their kids' sports teams. And at night, or in the spare minutes of a workday, they go online under a fake name and do the ugliest things they can think of. Because it feels good. Because nobody knows. Because the decent life they live during the day makes the cruelty at night feel like a release. Season 20 made one more point that is worth naming clearly. The trolls' argument with Troll Trace is not a moral argument. It is a logistical one. They are not upset because the service is unfair. They are upset because the service will make them accountable. The moment anonymity dies, their hobby dies with it. The show is saying directly that the engine of the whole trolling industry is not hate or anger, but simply the ability to do harm without being connected to it. Take the anonymity away and almost everyone stops. This was 2016. The season aired while the election was happening in the real world. The troll armies that helped shape that election were already operating at full strength. Parker and Stone looked at those accounts, looked at the rage they were producing, and chose to draw them not as monsters, but as somebody's dad upstairs with a glass of wine, humming along to a rock song while destroying a stranger's week. That choice is the most accurate thing the show has ever done about the internet. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. A few years later, the show would turn its attention away from the people inside the machine and toward the corporations fighting to own the machine itself. Section 10, The Streaming Wars, or South Park Eats Itself, the meta arc. By 2020, 2022, South Park had stopped being an outside voice on internet culture. It had become a subject of internet culture, fought over by billion-dollar companies in real courtrooms, while still trying to make jokes about those same companies inside its own episodes. The last big shot the show fired at the internet was not really about the internet at all. It was about what the internet had become. A battlefield between giant streaming platforms trying to decide who owned the attention of the entire world and who owned South Park itself. The key event that set up this whole final chapter happened on August 5th, 2021. Comedy Central announced that Parker and Stone had signed a deal worth $900 million. The deal extended South Park through season 30, set to run through the year 2027, and promised 14 new specials that would live only on the streaming service Paramount+. These specials were advertised at first as feature-length movies. Later, Parker and Stone themselves said that they were never meant to be movies and that the company Viacom-CBS had chosen to sell them that way. The specials kept coming out, roughly 2 per year, branded as events rather than films. On the surface, this was just a very rich deal for two guys in their early 50s who had already made a generation of kids laugh. Underneath, it set up a legal storm, because 3 years earlier, in 2019, Warner Brothers Discovery had paid about $500 million for the exclusive streaming rights to South Park on their service, then called HBO Max, now called Max. That deal gave Max the right to stream the main series. Then came the new deal with Paramount+, putting specials and new content on a competing service. Warner Brothers Discovery felt cheated. In February of 2023, they sued. That lawsuit is where the real story lives. Warner Brothers Discovery argued that Paramount had engaged in what they called a campaign of verbal trickery. By calling the new South Park specials events and movies instead of episodes, Paramount was, in their view, sneaking content out of the Max deal and into Paramount+. Warner Bros. Discovery said they had been promised 10 episodes per season, but had only received 16 episodes over 3 seasons combined. The complaint accused Paramount of conspiring with Parker and Stone to divert as much new South Park content as possible to Paramount+ to help their newer streaming service compete. In November of 2023, a New York Supreme Court judge named Margaret Chan ruled on parts of the case. She dismissed several of Warner Bros. Discovery's claims, including the one about verbal trickery. She wrote that Paramount's public claims about the specials being events and movies were, in her words, literally true, meaning the specials really were not full episodes in the normal sense, and Paramount had not broken the letter of the agreement by labeling them that way. Other parts of the lawsuit remained alive, including claims about unpaid licensing fees, but the core argument about trickery was thrown out. This is the situation Parker and Stone were in when they wrote their biggest commentary on streaming, a 2-part special released on Paramount+, in June and July of 2022, while the real lawsuit was either filed or about to be filed, while both of the companies involved were watching them closely, while they themselves were the $900 million center of the whole mess, and they made jokes about it anyway. South Park, The Streaming Wars, was released on Paramount+ on June 1st, 2022. It was the third of the Paramount+ specials and the 318th overall episode of the series. South Park, The Streaming Wars Part 2 followed on July 13th, 2022, as the 4th special and the 319th overall episode. Both were written and directed by Trey Parker. The premise, on the surface, is about water. Denver is in a drought. Streams are drying up. A villain named Pie Pie, who runs a water park in South Park, is shown rubbing his hands together as the drought worsens. The residents of Denver protest. The city holds meetings. A mysterious cartoon monster known as Man Bear Pig, a character South Park had been using since 2006 as a stand-in for climate change, returns to cause chaos. Randy Marsh ends up in a legal battle with his neighbor Steve Black over water rights for their farms. The plot gets bigger with every scene. By the end of Part 2, Cartman has somehow tricked his mother into getting him breast implants, and the entire town is drowning in a flood of disputes and lies. That is the cartoon on the screen. The deeper joke is always about streaming services. The word streaming in the title of the special has 2 meanings. A stream is a small river, which is what Denver is running out of. A stream is also the word for an internet video service, which is what every entertainment company in the world was fighting over at the time. The special is built on this double meaning. The drying up of real water is the metaphor. The flood of streaming services is the subject. Both are shown to be driven by the same basic problem. Companies that have bought up more than they can responsibly deliver, cutting corners, gouging users, and watching the whole system break down. The sharpest moment of the whole 2-parter is a speech given by Butters. It is a long speech, which is unusual for Butters. He stands in a setting that is supposed to look silly, and delivers a careful explanation of the state of streaming services. He names platforms, he names their problems, he describes the confusion of consumers who who cannot figure out where to watch anything. He sounds, for that minute, less like a cartoon third grader and more like a bitter industry executive at a corporate retreat. Writers covering the special noticed this right away. One reporter for The Hollywood Reporter pointed out that it is rare for Parker and Stone to get this specific and this long-winded unless they are personally furious about something. She speculated that the speech might be a sign of real problems between South Park and Paramount, or real creative disputes, or real frustration with the way the company had been shuffling around its streaming plans. The reporter admitted she could not know for sure, but the speech felt less like satire and more like a release valve for two guys who had signed a very big deal and were starting to discover what the inside of that deal actually looked like. That is the first layer of the meta argument of the streaming wars. The show is no longer outside the machine. The show is the machine. Every word the creators say now has a $900 million price tag attached to it. Every joke is also a legal exposure. Every character is an asset being argued over in a courtroom in New York. And instead of pretending this is not the case, Parker and Stone put that fact on screen and make it the subject of the whole special. The second big thing the special does is unload on celebrity endorsements of cryptocurrency. Throughout 2022, a very famous commercial had been airing, in which actor Matt Damon stood in front of a digital backdrop and looked serious while saying the line, "Fortune favors the brave." The commercial was for a company called Crypto.com. At the time, cryptocurrency was being pushed as the new big thing. Celebrities were being paid large sums of money to put their faces next to it. Crypto.com was a sponsor of the Los Angeles Lakers Stadium. It had a Super Bowl commercial. Matt Damon was its public face. Then, starting in late 2022 and continuing into 2023, many of these crypto companies crashed. Users lost money. Lawsuits started. The famous faces went quiet. By the time the Streaming Wars Part 2 was released on July 13th, 2022, the cracks were already showing, and Parker and Stone had already decided to come after Matt Damon by name. His real phrase from the commercial, "Fortune favors the brave," is used in the special as a target. It is mocked, repeated, and inserted into absurd situations. The special treats celebrity crypto ads as a symptom of the same disease as the streaming wars. Big names, big promises, rushed products, users left holding the bag. A reviewer for The Verge, writing after Part 2 came out, said that Matt Damon making that "Fortune favors the brave" commercial would go down in history as one of the best things that ever happened to South Park, because the show had now been mocking him for the line for over a year across multiple appearances. It had become a running joke, a recurring weapon, and a clean example of what South Park does best. Take a real thing that actually happened, keep hitting it until the real world catches up, and then point back at the original joke when everyone realizes how right it was. There is one more layer worth naming directly. The Streaming Wars two-parter, and the whole Paramount Plus era of South Park, is the point where the show stops being able to claim that it is on the outside of what it makes fun of. Parker and Stone are the two highest earning men in adult animation. Their deal pays them more per year than most network sitcom casts make in their entire runs. They are exactly the kind of people that a younger, hungrier show would be attacking, and they know it. Rather than hide from it, they built this final meta arc around it. The Streaming Wars is a special that is streaming on a service made as part of a legal dispute about streaming rights to make fun of streaming services paid for by a corporation that is fighting another corporation over who gets to stream the show making the fun. That is the most South Park idea ever put on screen. The joke is not the characters. The joke is the structure the joke exists inside. The larger arc this closes can be seen clearly now only from the far end of it. Back in 2008, when Canada on Strike aired, South Park was on the outside of internet culture, pointing at it from the cheap seats. The boys laughed at Tayson Day and the Dramatic Chipmunk because those viral figures were the whole story. By 2014, with Freemium Isn't Free, South Park was on the edge of the industry, turning down deals and making episodes about why the deals were bad, and then turning around a few years later and making the kind of game they had mocked. By 2022, South Park is the industry. It is a product fought over by corporate giants. It is the most valuable single piece of streaming library content in an entire generation of platforms. That journey is the real story. The show went from outside critic to inside target, and the meta arc of the Streaming Wars is Parker and Stone looking back at nearly 20 years of their own internet criticism and saying very clearly that they are not above any of it. They took the check. They are part of the machine. And the machine is as ridiculous from the inside as it looked from the outside. The final final image to hold on to is a quiet one. A small town going through a drought while a tiny villain runs a water park. A father fighting a neighbor over a river. A boy standing in a field giving a long speech about streaming services. All of it happening on a platform most of the audience had to specifically subscribe to, pay for, and navigate through confusing menus just to watch the special at all. The form of the special is itself the punchline. The viewer is already inside the streaming wars just by being there. Over the course of this video, the same pattern has shown up in one episode after another. The boys laughing at viral stars who turn out to be crying. Stan being sucked into Facebook. Kyle being sewn into a tablet. Butters filtering the comments until he breaks. Gerald humming along to Boston while he destroys strangers' lives. Randy fighting a hologram for the soul of music. All of it is one argument in different costumes. The argument is that the internet did not create new kinds of people. It gave old kinds of people new tools. And the tools, once given, never get taken back. For nearly 2 decades, South Park has been trying to say that out loud. Through fart jokes and song parodies and talking stool and cartoon devils and a $900 million streaming deal. The whole catalog is one long, messy, stubborn warning about where the wires were going to pull us. Delivered by 2 guys in Colorado who were never quite sure if anyone was listening and who kept making the shows anyway. The final judgment now rests with the only people who can actually decide what any of it meant. The audience that kept clicking, kept watching, and kept being the exact thing these episodes had warned them about. One season at a time. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.